today. So when you first log into BSP Link after TIP is launched, you'll be taken to the home page. And something important to note is that if an airline does not have a HOMO user, then the LOMO user will have access to all the TIP menus, including the consent management. So if everybody could log into their BSP Link and let us know when you're logged in, and I will start the interactive demo. If you could just type in the question box when you've logged in, and then I'll continue with the demonstration. Thank you. Great, I can see that people have started to log in, so I will continue on with the interactive demo. So the first thing that we set up when we log into TIP is the reports configuration. So to access those, we click TIP on the left-hand menu and then reports configuration. Now, when you first log into the reports configuration, you won't have anything in the table at the top. I have because I've used this airline for test purposes, but I'll walk you through now how to add a new report and how to modify an existing report. Before we do that, I'll just talk you through what each of the reports are about. So the following reports will be available to each airline. Report 2A, which is TIP enrolled ATMs transactions with airline consent. This report lists the transactions issued by agents using an enrolled ATM product with the airline consent. The report will indicate the transactions with or without cost recovery and the calculated cost recovery amount. Report 4 is TIP enrolled ATMs transactions without airline consent. This report lists the detected transactions issued by agents using an enrolled ATM product without the airline consent. And report 8 is unenrolled ATMs, potentially non-compliant transactions. This report lists the detected transactions issued by agents using a potential unenrolled ATM product. It's identified based on market intelligence available to IATA. Now, because this is a test system, some of the data and the information you'll see in the drop-down boxes is slightly different to the production system. So I will talk that through when I go through the reports. For example, 7A and 7B are just test reports and they're not currently available to the airlines. Also, the daily reports are not available. Reports are currently only available monthly. So I will start to add a new report to my requirements. So if we take TIP 8, the format that this is available in is CSV or PDF. You may select either of those. So I'll select CSV. The frequency in the only one available to you in production will be monthly. And the channel will be BSP Link. In this dropdown, as I said, it's test data, so you have email or BSP Link, but in production, you should only have BSP Link. And then you can choose the country that you wish the reports to be delivered in. Now, this is all test data, so it will not look like your production data, but for this example, I'm going to pick N3, which is the equivalent of Norway in production. When I have chosen all my configuration, I click the required checkbox and then I click submit. If I've made a mistake and I want to reset the form, I just click the reset button. You can select the configuration for multiple reports and then click the required buttons, and whichever ones you have selected the required checkbox for, they are the ones that will be added to the table above. So I'll just click submit to add that report in to my grid, and now it says operation completed successfully. Go back to reports configuration. You can now see that I have added a CSV monthly report and the channel BSP link that is going to be delivered in Norway. If I made a mistake when I was entering these reports, or I didn't want to receive them anymore, I can click the modify button alongside the report. And then if I don't want to receive this report anymore, I uncheck the required button and I click submit. Yes, I want to delete the record, and then go back to reports configuration, and 7A is no longer in my list. If I want to change the parameters of the report configuration, I click the modify button, and I'll just change the frequency for this purpose. So the 7B, I now want to receive it monthly instead of daily, and click submit. And when we pop back, we can see that 7B is now switched from daily to monthly. If you are following along and you're configuring, could you just pop a question in the box to let us know that you're ready to move on to the global configuration, and we will continue. Or if you have any questions about the report configuration, please let us know. Just as a note, some important information for you. The airline will receive the reports in BSP Link at the beginning of the subsequent month. So for example, if you have selected a monthly report, the reports for October will be available in BSP Link at the beginning of November. The reports can be accessed via Files Downloads in the menu of the country you selected during configuration. And as I have just set up configuration for some of these reports, there won't be any reports available to me yet, but they will appear in this screen. So I went to Files, Files and Download Files, and that's where you will be able to receive your BSP Link reports. The second part of the demonstration today is going to be about the HOMU global configuration and the consent configuration. In the global configuration menu, the HOMU user can set up the main parameter of airline consent. Sorry, I'll just pop back to reports configuration as I've seen there is a question. Just bear with me 1 second. The question that was asked was, report configuration is only available by country level. Is it possible by corporate level? The report configuration is actually set at global level. The ISO country in the reports configuration screen means that that's where the report will be delivered. There's been another question asked that if we provide the email address, will the report be sent directly? The answer to that question is yes, it will be. Are there any more questions on the report configuration before we move over to the global configuration? No, we'll move on to global configuration. So as I was saying, the global configuration menu, an airline HOMO user can set up the main parameter of airline consent. The very first step of the global configuration is to define if the consent setup will be managed by the HOMO user for all countries where the airline participates, or if it will be managed by the respective LOMO user. The global auto approval rules for product consent will be set to yes as default. This means that the HOMO user will have permissions to configure the consent rules. If it is set to no, it means that the LOMO user will have responsibility for configuring the consent rules. And please note, if you do set the global auto approval rules for ATM product consents at country level to no, the automatic consent to ATM products at country level is disabled. As this is a HOMO user demonstration, I'm going to say that we are the HOMO user today, so we are able to set consents at country level. The automatic consents to ATM products is used to define a default consent policy that will apply for all new ATM products for all countries in which TIP is rolled out. The first time that you access the global configuration screen, the global auto approval rules for product consent will be set to yes, and the automatic consent to ATM products will be set to no consent to all. There are a number of consent options available. No consent to all, which is the default setup. All the new ATM products will be set as no consent. Accept all without cost recovery. All new ATM products will be accepted by the airline. Accept all with cost recovery. All new ATM products will be accepted by the airline, but the airline may charge a cost recovery for the use of the ATM products. When selecting this option, the airline will be able to define a cost recovery amount, fixed or percentage, per BSP country applicable for all ATM products in that country. The last option is the manual consent. When selecting this option, the user will be able to define the consent policy: no consent, accept all without cost recovery, accept all with cost recovery, for each ATM product. In the case of cost recovery, the user will again be able to define the cost recovery amount or percentage per ATM product in the Global Products and Providers menu. So when we set the consent for a country, we choose at which level we want the consent to be. I'm going to take you through each of these options individually so you can see some of them have extra options. So when you choose accept all with without cost recovery, there are no extra fields to fill in here. You just any transactions that come through will be accepted and there will be no cost recovery applied. If you choose accept all with cost recovery, you will be able to define the individual cost recovery amounts for each country that the ATM product is available in. So, and they can all be different. They don't have to be the same. So, for example, A5 could be $1.25. If you choose fixed amount, you must choose the corresponding currency. But if you choose percentage, you don't select a currency. So you can see this country has multiple currencies, so you can choose the default currency that one would be in. If you choose no consent all, it takes you back to the default options. There are no other options to configure when you choose this option. And if you choose manual configuration, you will finish the global configuration at this point, and you will go to Global Consents Management to complete the configuration. And manual configuration is done at product level, whereas all of the other options are done at global level. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to use manual configuration. So now we go to the Global Consents Management country level screen, and you can choose your filter. You can filter by all regions or just specific regions, or you can just filter by country or per provider or per product. And I'll go and show you the providers and products menu in a second. So we submit our filter. For this purposes, I've chosen everything. At the top part of the screen, you can see the consents that already exist, and at the bottom part of the screen, you can see the consents that are available to us. So currently, we are consenting with cost recovery and a fixed amount of 2 Norwegian krone for product A1. So to add a new consent in for the manual configuration, we click the checkbox to the left of the country code and product. You can see there's multiple country codes and products here. So this product provider, product ER, is available in both Norway and Australia. So for this purpose, I'm just going to select one of them. You can choose the cost recovery type, fixed amount or percentage. If you leave it blank, it will assume no cost recovery. Sorry, it will assume no consent, and then you just put the effective from date in. So I'll just say it's going to be from Friday this week. For provider 2, product A1, I'm going to set this one different to the one above. I'm going to set that as a percentage, and you will receive the notice and disclaimer. You'll receive that when you do the cost recovery type field and the cost recovery amount field if you have chosen a cost recovery type. This is percentage, just 125, and then I'll choose a start date for that one as well. So when I have finished setting up my manual consents, I click Add Consents. Oh, I've chosen an invalid date. Very strange. Sorry, everyone. There we go. Chosen a valid date now. If I go back to the global consent management at country level, you will now see that the 2 consents that I just added are now in the top table, and the consents that are available are in the bottom table. If you are adding your consents now, could you let us know by the questions box when you're finished, and I will move on to show you information about the providers and products. So the information that you have on the screen about the providers and products doesn't really tell you much about what they're about. So we'll go and have a look at the individual providers and products. So if we click the global providers and products menu item on the under the tip menu, click submit, you now have some more detail on the providers and products available to you. On the right hand side, there's a country code, so you can see which countries these products are available in. And in the grid, you've got the provider code and the product code, and you can click on these to see further information. So we'll have a look at provider 2, click on the provider code. So this is further information about the provider. if you need to contact the provider, you've got an email address and a phone number, and you can download this information. For the product code, if you want to see further information on the product, you can click on the product code. This will give you much more detailed information about the setup of the product. And you can also download this information if you want to be able to refer to it later. We also have the ability to query the consents that are current. So if we click on Global Consents Query, submit. This gives you the list of all the current consents that are active. So you will see that the top line of the consent shows you the country level consent, and the next lines underneath show you the agent level consent. Sorry, those ones. Now we haven't covered agent level consent yet, and I will take you back through that in a second. On this page, you can filter by country, or you can filter by product, so that you can see the information that you're looking for quicker and easier. You can also go to Global Consents History, and that gives you a historical consent. So these are not active anymore. These are consents that were set in the past. When we did the global configuration, you would have noticed that there was another line that we didn't talk about at the time, the global auto approval rules for ATM product consent agent level. So this defines whether we are able to set consent at agent level or not. So setting it to no means that we cannot set it at agent level, and setting it to yes means we can set it at agent level. There's a new menu that's been added to TIP. We went live with that on Wednesday last week for the countries that are currently live with TIP. And that's the Global Consents Management agent level. Now, to be able to add agent level consent, you must have an agent in mind. So you can, if you know the code of the agent, you can select it from the drop down, or you can start to type it in, and it'll populate selections for you, or you can type in the agent name, and you can select it from the list. Once you've chosen your filter, you can select submit, and this will bring up the agent level consent for that agent. So at the top part of the screen, you have your country level consent. So for Norway, for product code A1, that's set to cost recovery with a fixed amount of 2 Norwegian krone. And you'll see that for Norway, for product code ER, that is set to yes, so that's accept all without cost recovery. Now you can set the individual agent consent at product level. So if we take product ER, for example, that's set to accept all without cost recovery. And we might say that for this agent, we don't want to accept it at all. So we'll set it to no. And the only other information you need to choose if you set it to no is a date. For product A1, it's set to cost recovery in the country level, but we might decide that we just want to set it to yes, and then we set a date. Now, the bottom option in the agent level consent is product code 16, and this doesn't appear in the country level consent because we have set this product to no consent to all. So if we choose to consent for this agent, it must be something other than no. So if we choose cost recovery, we get the notice and disclaimer, and then we need to fill out the same information that we would fill in if we were setting the country level consent. So the cost recovery amount, the agent level currency, and we need to set a date. I think that date's incorrect. And then we can add or modify the consents. And if I again, sorry, 4. Sorry, I should have put a 0 in front of my cost recovery. There we go. Then when we go back to global consents management by agent and we find the agent that we just added, Travel Net Osters, submit. You will see now that the table is slightly changed down the bottom and that the effective from dates are now greyed out and some of the other information is greyed out. You can change the information in the drop downs, but you must remember to select the check boxes before you try to change the information, otherwise the line of the agent won't be active. Are there any questions on agent level consent? So the final thing that I am going to show you today is going to be the email alerts. This is accessed via the email alert menu on the left-hand side and then email alert maintenance. You need to scroll to the very bottom of the page to select the tip products and consents email alert screen. So in this menu, an airline HOMO user can set up email alerts to receive notifications of new products enrolled and changes to consent. Once you have entered your email information, clicked apply, you will receive an online confirmation that subscription was successful. You will also receive a confirmation via email. Now the agents are also able to subscribe to email alerts, and they receive certain information in these email alerts, new products that have been added or consents that have been added or stopped. And if there is cost recovery, they will receive notification of the cost recovery amounts in these emails. So when you're setting up a consent, regardless of the change that you make, if the agent has subscribed to email alerts, they will receive an email address, and sorry, they will receive an email. This is that was the final part of the webinar today. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to let us know. I'll hand you back over to Oscar, and he will conclude the webinar.
Hi everyone. So we came to the end of this webinar. We went. I mean, just to do a recap, we went through the presentation, a brief introduction of transparency in payments, status, where we stand, and then my colleague Don walked you through the global configuration, the consent screens, the agent level consent, the email notification. So, and the expectation was that you were following us. That's why one of the reasons you were selected for this webinar is because you have a HOMO user in BSP Link. So I trust this this has been useful. Now we're going to take the time to answer some questions that are popping up. No. We for one of the questions that Ivan has raised about if you're going to get this presentation, yeah, you're going to. We're going to send actually a recorded the recorded session of this, so you will be able to go through the webinar offline. There is one question from Muniz Haisa Chemorat. If an airline has opted no consent to all, where will this be reflected when an agent is trying to issue the ticket? Agent is disputing our ADM, claiming that they are not aware of the airline choice. At the moment, we have implemented the post-monitoring transaction, and we have not implemented what we call the upfront validation, which is before the ticket is issued. So today it's all about communication, meaning that we have communicated to the market that we're going live with transparency in payments. So the agents, and we send communications to the agents about the resolutions being in place on a specific market, and 60 days before it happened, and also on the day that was going live, so they are aware of the resolution being in force. Now, this specific question of where the agent sees no consent to all when it's trying to issue the ticket, there is not such a functionality today that is going to tell the agent before issuing the ticket. So it's about also reinforcing the communication of your current payment policy that you have in place. There is also a question, my request, will it be possible to get a copy of the email that is sent to the agents after the airline has filled in consent info in this link? Yes, my colleague Don is trying to share it in a moment. Coming back to the question, where do we update the payment policy? Is it in BSP Link? In BSP Link, you will be able to reflect part of your policy. Most probably your policy is more complete than the rollout that is today in transparency in payments. So we are today live in 22 countries only. So in those 22 countries, you will be able to reflect your payment policy by consenting or not based on the products that are available in that market. That's what we can offer today. It will, as we go, that's why it's important to roll out the different countries. So the more countries we have, and also we have another stream of work where we are engaging with issue providers. So we're expecting to have more products enrolling in the market, so your payment policy can be reflected there.
Hi everyone. In addition to Oscar's comments, there are some important notes that should be taken into account on the consent setup and cost recovery options. IATA makes no recommendation with respect to the acceptability or appropriateness of any specific remittance method for your airline, which shall always remain an independent business decision to be made by your airline. Your airline is also fully responsible for assessing the legal and regulatory compliance of any such decision under applicable law. The airline's individual consent set up to accept with or without cost recovery for a specific ATM product will be displayed to each agent individually, so the agent can decide to use a certain ATM product or not. If selected by your airline, cost recovery amount or percentage will be included in the relevant tip report for your information. However, IATA will not automatically collect these amounts from the agent, and each airline is free to decide on how to collect these amounts from the agent. Thank you.
Hi. Yeah. Hello. I'm going to answer on the question, is it correct that here shown consent structure per market, but as well on agent level is the basis for implementing from validation, right? Yes, that's correct. We're building up a single system that is going to serve as the basis for both validation, the post-monitoring validation that is already in place in 22 countries, but also for the from validation. So the from validation will have access to the same information that we are going to use for the monitoring after the transaction. Um, Answering to the question of, so you will say that there are no way that the agent have missed this information. Agents claim they haven't heard about this. We have selected BSP Link as the front end for transparency in payments due to the that actually brings together agents and airlines. Operationally speaking, they usually come very frequent to this platform for other purposes, other operational purposes. So we do send the information to the travel agents, but we cannot, of course, I think us or majority of systems, they cannot guarantee that actually the agent has received the information. Are there any other questions from the participants? Yeah, there is a question. Is it possible to get information of the dates of communication to the agents and a copy of that information? Yes, of course. We can share that. Um, I think for the purpose to be punctual, Vivi Amundsen, we will send it to you. Are you interested in a specific market, Vivi? Okay, Nordic countries. From the rest of the participants, let us know if you have more questions. We're allowing a couple minutes more for you to articulate your question. There is no further question from Mariska KLM. Thank you, Mariska, for attending. Well, we would like, there are no further questions popping up. So we gather that it is the end of the webinar. We would like to really thank you for your participation. As mentioned, this will be made available to you, so you can watch it offline or share with other colleagues that couldn't participate. Please remember that we have today 2 sessions. There is a webinar, the one that is happening now, and there is one in the afternoon European time that is meant to cover other time zones. So you feel free to attend also the second one. But otherwise, thank you very much. Hope this was very useful for you. That was the purpose, to be an hands-on webinar, so you could follow my colleague Don through the live demo that was provided. With that final comment, we're wrapping up the webinar. Thank you again, and have a nice day.